Welcome to By the Streams, a resource from Manchester House of Prayer. Our heart is that we would each have a real relationship with God, being like the trees in Psalm 1, planted by the streams of living water, that our roots would go down deep. In this episode, we're joined by Corey Stark, who leads Ignite the Nations, a ministry that travels around the world, teaching people some of the key messages of the House of Prayer. And we just have a conversation about what it looks like to build authentic communities. So enjoy. Corey, thanks so much for being with us. I'm really excited that we get to talk to you today. We've tracked a bunch of history. Had you come over and speak at a bunch of different conferences we've done, and it's been awesome. And I love your heart. Like, there's an authenticity to you and the way that you're pursuing the Lord, and I've always really valued that. And so when you speak, I find my heart is listening because there's truth to what you're saying. And so I wanted to get you on, and I wanted to talk to you about something that we've been talking about the last few times we've spoken, which is community. And I know that it's a hotbed topic over the last few years. Like everyone, every church, every house of prayer, every ministry. I mean, almost like in the workplace, community has become an important thing, and yet we're striving for it and we're not necessarily finding it. And so I suppose I wanted to just throw that to you and say, what's your take on it? What's the kind of things that the Lord's been talking to you about recently?
Yeah, well, first, thank you, Michael, for having me. I love you. I love the Manchester House of Prayer, the community that you guys have there. So for you, man. So for you and your family. Community, that's been such a big part of my heart for so long. And I've had a lot of great examples of what to do and what not to do. And so, as you know, my wife and I took a sabbatical a couple years ago that just totally changed the trajectory of our life. And the Lord has really been infusing us with a greater desire for intimacy with Him, for one another. And, that starts in the home. And so we've really been pursuing this. And when I think of building authentic, rich, transparent, vulnerable community and all that entails, it kind of reminds me of like, you could pursue love and the first commandment, and by really focusing on loving, let's say, I'll use marriage, by really focusing on loving my wife, it will automatically take care of all the wrong things that I do. Right? Like not doing this or not doing that, or like what Jesus kind of transitioned from Old Testament to New Testament. Instead of saying, don't lie, don't steal, don't commit adultery, all he said was focus on love, right? So by doing the right thing, you can eliminate all the wrong things. Mm-hmm. So when I think of community, I think this is really an important aspect, is that if we actually know what to pursue and we know how to cultivate it, we're going to solve 1,000 lesser community issues than if we're running after trying to fix this and fix that and fix the other, which is, I've experienced a lot of that. And it's just like Band-Aids, So, so I think, because like some of the things that you've probably desired and a lot of different ministries that I've been involved with have desired is, they want higher attendance, not in a negative sense, like they just want to puff themselves up, but I mean, they love what they've been called to, the vision God's given them, and they want people to be involved. Mm-hmm. Or they want more engagement, or they want deeper relationships, or they want more transparency, or they want to see more freedom and victory in the people that participate. So if we can just pursue the right thing, then like dominoes, all these other things will just kind of come into place. So, so the question is, what do we pursue as one of the primary? Because there's a few things, but I mean, what is one of the primary things that we are to pursue to cultivate authentic community? And obviously we're going to pursue Jesus, right?
Yeah,
We're
you'd
all,
hope.
that's like number one. But I'm not talking about pursuit in the vertical now, because if God is all we needed, then when he spent his time with Adam in the garden, he wouldn't have said, "It's not good that man be alone."
Yeah, sure.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
think about that for a second. So Jesus is walking with Adam, but yet he says, "It's not good that you're alone." And Adam's like, "Wait a second, I'm here with you." You know, but so there's something more God wants. He wants us to have these horizontal, rich relationships of love, and so
Mm.
that's what I'm talking about today, right? Um, so again, there's a few things we could point to, but the one I want to point to today might be a little surprising. Is joy.
Okay.
Is joy, and so I would say, in a lot of the things that the Lord's been showing me, that joy is one of the top pursuits if you want to have an authentic, deep, rich, transparent, real community. And I don't know. You probably haven't thought of that one before, have you?
I mean, I find that fascinating because I think what we tend to do, and I'm talking from personal experience in terms of the things that I've done. Like when I've thought about what can we be doing to really cultivate the community that we've got around the house of prayer, and what can we be doing to encourage people. I think we very quickly think in terms of, let's put another meeting on. Let's create another opportunity for us to be around each other. And if we're around each other, then that will automatically create community. And I suppose that there's an element in terms of when we decide that, we think about, well, how, what we might do and whether it would be enjoyable or not. But I certainly, yeah, I'm interested to hear more, like in terms of what does it look like then? Like what do we do? Like how do we pursue joy? Because here's another thing that I always think about with joy is it's a fruit of the spirit.
Yeah.
And yet we sometimes talk about, like, we'll stir up joy in ourselves. Let's be joyful and then the Lord will be here. And so if it's a fruit of the spirit, like what are we doing? Like how do we then cultivate that, one in community and in ourselves, I suppose, but then what do you mean? Like how are we going to make joy central to our pursuit of authentic community?
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I think one of the things that the Lord has really emphasized to me, number one, is that joy is foundational to community. It should be anyway. It's foundation to biblical, authentic community. It's not just the cherry on top, you know,
Hmm.
like what I used to think was like, well, if we pray hard enough, study the Bible enough, fast enough, serve enough, give enough, then maybe we'll be eligible to experience a little joy on the backside. you know, but joy is actually the foundation of all those things. And
Mm.
to your comment about if we gather enough and create an environment where people can connect, it's going to work. I actually have experienced the opposite, that unless you have the right culture or environment, more meetings actually does more damage than good,
Mm.
because what people experience is the wrong aspects of community over and over and over, and it
Yeah.
actually takes the community apart as opposed to bringing them together. So to make sense of even why joy is foundational, I think it's important to look at it from a biblical perspective, which I don't think many people have ever studied joy in the Bible, to be honest with you. It's just not something that we teach on a lot, or at least I haven't heard a lot of teaching on it. And we also need to look at it from a kind of neuroscientific perspective, because we need to understand what joy does in the brain and the body for it to make sense why it's foundational to community. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah, no, makes total sense.
So the first point, again, this is new to me in the last 2 years. Okay, but when I began to see these things, it was like nuclear bombs going off in my spirit. like, oh my gosh, that's why this never worked. Or, oh my gosh, that's why Jesus said this. It was just like so much revelation came by putting a few pieces together. So I pray that it does the same thing for you and everybody that listens to this, because I think in the days ahead, we will not be able to prevail. That's the word I want to use. We will not be able to prevail through the end time drama without a overflowing supply of joy in the inner man, because the joy of the Lord is our strength, and that's very real.
Yeah.
So number one is that joy is relational. Joy cannot happen apart from relationships. And this is where people need to differentiate between happiness and joy. You can be happy about circumstances and surroundings, but unless that appreciation of your circumstances and surroundings leads to gratitude towards God, which is a person, you can't experience joy. Joy is totally relational. It's person to person. You can't cultivate joy in yourself without the thought or the experience of other people with you. It's impossible, again, from a biblical or neuroscience perspective. You can experience happiness, but you can't experience joy.
Okay.
So joy is relational. Second thing is, what does joy mean? I want to define it so it makes a little more sense. Joy actually means that someone is glad to be with you, or that you're the sparkle in someone's eye. As a father, you experience this all the time with your kids, I'm sure. Think of that moment when you've been away on a trip and you come back, and the first time your little guys see you and they come running out the door, Dad, arms up. That experience of how your heart just lights up because you are the sparkle in their eyes, and you communicate back to them, oh, I love you, like, I've missed you. You're important. I value you. I delight in you. That is what joy is.
Yeah.
And we can experience that with the Lord, because he is certainly glad to be with us all the time. He's glad to be with us exactly the way that we are. We don't have to hide anything from him. But that is what joy means, that someone is glad to be with you, the real you, not who they want you to be, but the real you. And they don't want, they're not glad to be with you because you have something to offer them or that they want something from you, but they're simply glad to be with you. So that's what true joy is. And the opposite of that would be, you can imagine it's you can come and go. People don't know if you're there. They don't care if you're there. You're not really adding to something. And the scary thing for me, or the unfortunate thing is, I would say, is that the majority of the way that we have unknowingly and what's the word I'm looking for? Unintentionally set up many of the houses of prayer around the earth. Not just me personally, but just us, collective us.
Yeah.
It's that, think of some of the rules in the house of prayer. You can't talk, right? You avoid eye contact because you're deep in prayer with God. All these things, bro, they communicate the opposite of joy. They say, I don't care that you're here, and actually you're more of a nuisance being here than not. So don't look at me, don't bother me, stay out of my praying lane, because I'm walking back and forth here, right?
Yeah.
We got all this stuff. That is the opposite of cultivating joy. And the sad thing is that it's actually contrary to God's house of prayer. Think of Isaiah 56:7. What does he say? I'm going to bring you to my holy mountain. I will make you joyful.
Yeah, that's good.
In my house of prayer.
Yeah. But I think, that's really interesting, because that's been that's been one of the observations that like we've made over the last, I'd say certainly the last kind of 4 or 5 years of doing MHOP. I mean, we've always had the advantage that it's really small, and so if someone comes into the room, we're genuinely glad that they're there,
Yeah,
because
I
it
know.
means that suddenly there's 3 of us in the room.
Yeah,
So that's a big deal for us, right?
yeah,
But as things have grown little by little, I think we've become more aware of, particularly because we've only just moved into a building that is ours. So up until now, before every meeting we've had to set up, and after every meeting we've had to set down. And House of Prayer isn't like church, so you don't really have a tea and coffee time afterwards in the same way that you would at
right.
church. So there is no, I don't know if you do tea and coffee. I don't know what you guys would do in Hawaii after church. I don't know, some sort of punch drink, I'd imagine.
Oh
But
man, Kona coffee. They
okay,
grow it right here. Yeah, it's like the best in the world. Kona coffee.
okay. Well, next time in Hawaii, I'll grab one.
I'll get you a bag.
Um, Excellent. But we talked about, like, what can we do to actually make this a pleasant place to walk into if it's your first time?
Right.
Because if you walk in the middle of one of our prayer meetings, we don't have like a greeting team, because
Yeah.
there's only a handful of us, full stop, that make up everything that's happening. So we don't really have a team of greeters. We'll have some people in the room, some people on team. What are we doing to engage with people to let them know that they are welcome? That if they have questions, they can ask anyone. Like, what are we doing to try and set that culture of connectedness, is how we've talked about it, a culture of connectedness, so that people, whether they've never been before or they come every week, feel like they are a part of what we're doing. And so I suppose the thing that we've tried to do is, we've not made it, this is your job, you have to say hello, but we've said to everyone that's on our team, all of our staff, our interns, when somebody walks in, whether you know them or not, smile,
Yeah.
say hello, let them know that they're welcome. If they're looking for a seat, find them a seat. If they have never been before, show them where we've got tea and coffee, show them where they've got like different bits, talk to them about what we do. But actually, I think the way that you're communicating this actually is giving me a level of, actually, I understand why those things are so important, and actually it helps me think, well, what are we doing to prioritize that? So I'm fascinated. But I've interrupted you. Sorry.
No,
Like,
no, no. Great. Yeah, I mean, just to take your point there, I think some of those things that you're doing are the perfect way to communicate that we're glad that you're here, and to begin to cultivate joy. Uh, One thing that's really interesting, though, is that true joy cannot be faked. So I think we've all experienced that guy that has the big smile on his face and he says all the right words, but you know that he doesn't mean what he's saying. It's like the greeter at Costco or whatever, you know, you know. And so by putting greeters in the front, there's nothing wrong with that. But if they're doing it out of duty and they're not doing it out of a genuine place, it actually does more damage than good. And here's some neuroscience behind it to just show
okay,
you this. This was like mind blowing to me. That right brain to right brain communication happens faster than left brain's ability to control your facial expressions.
okay,
Okay, so let me say that again. So, right brain to right brain communication, which is where I'm going to pick up what your face is saying to me faster than what your left brain has the ability to control your face. So, that means practically that when I see somebody, my brain will know quicker than they can put on the fake smile what their real reaction to me is. Can you
yeah,
believe that?
I can
Dude,
totally believe that.
that's like, what? So I'm sure we've had those experiences where, we've run into somebody that we haven't seen for a while, or maybe we've just run into somebody and our first reaction is, whoa, they look awkward. And then they put on the smile, and then they say all the right things, but we know that was faker than fake. And so that does more damage um, than good. So it's important that people communicate, you know, True joy is, again, man, I'm so glad to see you. I'm genuinely glad to see you. And so this is where we need to get back to the foundation of love, because if you've got people that don't know how to love other people, that's a problem in the church, because it's all about people. And it's really unfortunate. And I've been caught up into this myself, but in such a task-oriented, mission-driven church experience, sometimes guys like me who are very left-brained by nature, we're way more interested in getting the jobs done and the mission complete than we are about loving people. And I think the Lord totally reverse that and say, guys, the kingdom is all about people.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We pray that you would encounter the Lord through what's been shared. To find out more about who we are, head to mhop.org.uk or find us on Facebook or Instagram at mhopuk. For information about By the Streams, head to mhop.org.uk/by the streams. Bless you.